Thank you, Laska here. Look, I would like to welcome my namesake, Senator or Minister Patrick O'Donovan here today, and to first of all thank him for kindly visiting my hometown of Bantry some time ago to see firsthand the damage of the flooding, and also to acknowledge the fact that, I'm not sure was it before or after your visit, that Minister Michael McGrath, it's his hometown as well, because that's where his father was born and reared and immigrated to Cork, if I can use that phrase. He also visited, and that kind of gave some hope. The problems in Bantry, as you're probably aware, is that we have a double issue. The perfect storm is that when there is severe flooding after, say, a yellow status or orange status weather alarm, if that combines with the high tides, or we call them spring tides, you have the perfect storm. That is a very serious issue. Bantry is a relatively low-lying coastal town, and it's long-term exposed to future tidal increases and extreme storm weather. I opened up a little business there in 1981, and I've noticed decade by decade that the rain seems to have increased, and I can rarely, in the first decade of my business, I think once we had severe flooding. In this past winter, from October to now, there's been 5 separate occasions where there's flooding, and 2 of them quite serious. And it's very stressful and anxious to people with businesses closed because of COVID to come in and find clothes and shoes floating around in 18 inches of water, and it has done a lot of damage. On the question of damage, insurance companies are now, if you can get insurance because of the repetitiveness of the flooding, they're upping their premium, and the day will not be far away when they'll say, hold on, you have a perennial situation there in Bantry and we won't cover you again. Stormwater flooding is a town developed in new developments over the years. Water is now running off hard surfaces and into the streams and culverts too quickly. The capacity of the culverts are no longer sufficient, and it should be remembered, and I want to pay tribute, I normally don't, to the I suppose the British Empire in their heyday and the monarchy, that in around 1860 they built these systems in Bantry and probably other towns, and in fairness they've lasted just the time. The structural culverts still stand in good use, but the volumes of water coming in, the culverts were never, when they were designed and the engineers dealt with this in around 1860, they were never envisaged to take that volume of water. Solutions, I suppose that's the big thing, Minister, to rebuild and increase capacity and identify measures and techniques to slow down the quick release of excessive rainwater into the culvert infrastructure. The progress to date, I would suggest, Minister, to set up a collaboration, communication between all the stakeholders, not necessarily business. We have a very active BBA, Bantry Business Association, who actually issue flood warnings very frequently when there's a problem, which is very helpful, but also private houses and other. That's essential that the stakeholders be communicated with. I think we need a structural update on the culverts system, and I think a feasibility study of different solutions should be embarked on very quickly. We must identify critical problem areas and provide funding for immediate remedial work to improve the situation. Particularly the culvert matter isn't of huge. That can be done without further reports or whatever, and design a long-term plan. I was in the council for many years, and I got to Dawn in 2002, and I was on the Bantry Harbour Board, which was eventually subsumed and taken over by the Cork Port Authority. And in my view, that was a retrograde step, because in around 2010-2012, there was plans to complete a certain plan for Bantry, and one of the pivotal issues is to set up at high tide a barrage or a sluice gate, so that at the spring tide, coinciding with the flooding, the tidal water could be kept out, and you'd create about 6 or 7 acres inside in the inner harbour where the flood water could gather. So with that, Minister, I'm looking forward to your response, and again my sincere thanks for you in visiting the town some time ago.
Thank you, Senator. Minister O'Donovan.
Thanks, Cathaoirleach, and I want to thank Senator O'Donovan for raising the matter, and I'm pleased to provide an update on what's happening in Bantry. And as the Senator quite rightly says, I was down in Bantry and other parts of West Cork, which got a fairly horrific doing of flooding during the summer, and I want to thank the outdoor staff of Cork County Council, together with all of the voluntary emergency staff, my own outdoor officials of the Office of Public Works and the engineering staff of the Office of Public Works and Cork County Council as well for all of their efforts, not just during the summer but since then. So following the flood events which occurred in Bantry in August and November 2020, measures have been implemented by Cork County Council in conjunction with the Office of Public Works in advance of the predictive rainfall and tidal events, including recently due to status orange weather and rainfall weather warnings. These include Cork County Council staff placing large sandbags at the Sands Quay where some of the tidal waters enter the square, and also mobile and fire service pumps are placed in standby. These measures have mitigated flooding in the town by reducing the number of properties that flooded, and I visited some of these and I understand the difficulties that they've caused, and Senator O'Donovan is right when he says that the frequency and the violence that the flooding is now causing is getting worse. I understand that it's acknowledged locally to Cork County Council staff that the measures have prevented some of the further properties from flooding. For the most recent forecasted rainfall events, Cork County Council hired an additional 2 mobile pumps in advance. Measures were again put in place, and the town was monitored by local Cork County Council staff throughout the period of the 23rd to the 25th of February. Thankfully, no flooding occurred in the town and the forecast rainfall did not materialise. The flood risk management plans launched by the Taoiseach in May 2018 include a recommendation to progress the project level development and planning of 10 new flood relief schemes for County Cork, which includes Bantry. Each individual flood relief scheme has a steering group comprising of representatives from the OPW and Cork County Council. A steering group is in place to progress Bantry. Bantry flood relief scheme is due to be implemented as part of the first tranche of the 60 new schemes that have been prioritised. There have been a number of potentially viable flood relief works outlined for Bantry to be implemented as appropriate after project level assessment and planning. These would include fluvial flood defences comprising of walls and embankments and tidal flood defences, as Senator O'Donovan has said. These measures have preliminary total project cost estimates of around £6.5 million and would protect about 200 properties. Cork County Council, in partnership with the Office of Public Works, is currently finalising tender documents for the procurement of engineering consultants to progress the development of the scheme, and a prior information notice has been published by the Council on the Government's procurement website, e-tenders, and I am delighted that the tender is due to be advertised very shortly. Once consultants are appointed to progress the flood relief scheme for Bantry, consultation with the statutory and non-statutory bodies as well as the public will take place at the appropriate stages to ensure that all parties have the opportunity to input into the development of the scheme. And at that stage, Senator O'Donovan, I think the references that you made, that everybody be included, it's at that stage that will be vital, and the public in Bantry, including the Bantry Business Association, which you referenced, they will all be included. In the meantime, Cork County Council Regional Local Roads Design Office have commenced the preparation of the consultants' brief documents to carry out the repair and reconstruction of the Main Street culvert, which you've also referenced, which has been a significant element contributing to the flooding on the Main Street. And I saw that myself when I was down there, New Street and north and south of Wolftown Square. My office is liaising with Cork County Council on the integration of these works into the flood relief scheme. I know from speaking with the residents last year that flooding in Bantry is causing concern for the residents and businesses alike. And Cork County Council is investigating whether any further interim measures can be put in place in advance of the main flood relief scheme, which will mitigate against the flood risk currently being present. I'll finish in a while, Kyla. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Senator, you have a minute to respond.
I want to thank the Minister for his response, and I'm glad to know that he's very au fait with the situation that pertains in Bantry. And I suppose the difference is that Bantry, because it's a tidal town, has the double problem of extreme rainfall combining with the tidal issue. And I would like maybe, in conclusion, Lasco here, that the Minister might, if it's possible, indicate some sort of a timeline. Are we waiting for 5 years or whatever? Because it is an ongoing issue. And when I was a deputy back in 2002, that year, we had thought we were coming to a situation where it would be concluded and dealt with, but obviously it has been in some, I'm not being political about it, but it seems to have been forgotten over the last decade, and I suppose recent flooding has focused minds on it again, and maybe the Minister might give some indication. And I appreciate the efforts he's making. I also want to thank Cork County Council and their staff, because there's a lot of goodwill there to resolve this issue, and I think that should be maintained and the impetus kept up, because if we lay back on the oars again, we could be facing terrible damage again.
Thank you, Senator. And the final word goes to the Minister for 1 minute.
Yeah, well, thanks, Senator. Look, I had a pre-arranged meeting with Cork County Council actually for tomorrow. I'm meeting the engineering staff of Cork County Council tomorrow in relation to what happened not only last August, but ironically what happened last week as well. So we will be discussing Bantry, Bandon, Skibbereen, Clonakilty, Fermoy, Mallow, and also the other ones that are in the pipeline, places like Middleton. But your colleague Senator Dooley will know from places like Clonlara, we oftentimes in the Office of Public Works get objected to from people who often live many miles away. So when the scheme does come to fruition in Bantry, we could get objected to from people, for instance, in Wicklow. And I hope that doesn't happen, because the people in Bantry who are looking out at Victorian culverts, which in many cases have collapsed under the street, which cannot take the volume of water that are being taken, they need a solution. And the solution will have to be an engineered solution. Trees will not hold back the volume of water that are coming down off of the hills in Bantry. They will not hold back the tide. It does need a hard engineered solution. The OPW will build it. We will require the support of the people of Bantry, which I know will be there, but we hope it is not objected to. But I hesitate to say that it probably will be, so I can't put a time frame on it. But we have the money, we do have the commitment, and we will have the support of Cork County Council. I know we will have the goodwill of the people of Bantry, and I hope that the people who routinely object to people in places like Bantry don't do that in this case, because the people of Bantry deserve to have their town protected.